This post is from the subreddit Relationships and it's by user xranawayhatter. I, 21 female, feel like my roommate, 23 male, is trying to take my dogs for himself. Strange story. Hello, I moved into this beautiful, cheap, spacious house over 6 months ago and I found an old university friend to move in with me and help pay rent. I'm very happy with this home and I know my dogs are too. There's a huge garden, it's a 3-bedroom and 2-bathroom home and relatively cheap. I don't plan on moving out, but unfortunately neither does Max, my roommate. I have 2 big dogs and I made that very clear to Max before moving in. He knew they'd be moving in with me and he was all for it and said he didn't have an issue. My dogs are huskies for those wondering. Anyway, Max was a little pissy for the first month and started complaining about hair being found everywhere, how they were high maintenance, even though I'm the one who cares for them, and how he thought they were constantly getting in the way. I told him to suck it all up because he knew they'd be moving here too, and so he did. And after just a few weeks, he did stop complaining. The issue now is he's way too in love with them. He's gone from pretty much thinking they're a nuisance to wanting their attention all the time. At first I thought it was cute because he's never had dogs and I could see he was enjoying playing with them, but it's gotten to a severe point now. For example, he tries to have them in his room at all times if I'm not home. I hate that, and I've told him several times I want them out in the garden so they can play. I don't want to have to lock them in my room so he doesn't keep them in his. I complained and threatened to file a complaint, so he's stopped doing this so often now, but every once in a while I'll come home and I can see them running out of his room, and I know they don't go in there out of their free will. He'll also walk them even though I've specifically said no. I want to be the only one that walks them, and considering they're my dogs, he should listen to me. He says he's just trying to help, but I'm not buying it. They're supposed to be out in the garden all day anyway, and only walked when I come home from work in the evening. He's also calling my dogs by their own nicknames and gets annoyed when they don't respond. He'll feel jealous when he sees they're more excited to see me than they are to see him, and often will complain if he sees they're cuddled up to me. He will also physically grab them and pull them toward him, but I've told him to stop. Also, one of the dogs tried to bite him after he grabbed him by the neck 4 times. I stopped him before he could get bitten, but I didn't want him to agitate my dog, and that is not okay. I don't know what to do. He keeps telling me I'm exaggerating and he's only showing them love, but I can't help but feel he's just obsessed with them. At the moment, I'm keeping the dogs in the garden and living room while I'm out as usual, and they're perfectly happy that way. For the past few days, things have been pretty relaxed and he hasn't tried anything odd, but I'm afraid it'll happen again. The last incident was the biting thing that happened, and I'm afraid I'll come home and one of them will have bit him and then will have to be put down. I love my dogs more than I even like this inconsiderate idiot, so I won't allow that to happen. I need some insight, Reddit. Well, OP, yeah, your roommate does sound like he's very annoying with your dogs, but I don't get the impression that he's trying to take them for himself. I kind of get the impression that he's really excited about the dogs now. I mean, he kind of learned to live with them and he really likes them now. He definitely doesn't know how to handle dogs or how to handle himself around dogs. Maybe you can help him with that instead of getting angry at him. And yes, what he's doing, keeping him in his room, is not right, considering they're huskies, which are high energy level dogs, but your solution was to lock them in your room so he couldn't have him in his. I don't think that's a solution there. I think my approach to this would be to teach him how to properly be around my dogs. Maybe even go with him for walks every once in a while. Not all the time, of course, because you're the owner and you're the one that's taking care of them. But since you mentioned that he's never had dogs and he's really happy with dogs now, well, maybe there's a future dog owner here and you teaching him might be a good thing. Now, if he's not interested in learning anything from you regarding dogs and he keeps doing these things to your dogs like locking them in his room, then sure, go ahead and file the complaint. And what do you guys think about this whole situation? What would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Tall Friendly Ginger says, I would have a serious conversation with him framed around a "you're not used to dogs, here's how to treat them" angle. Because outright having a go at him for mistreating your dogs, despite you being right, will not get a good reception from him. Frame it like, I know you want to cuddle the dogs, but don't grab them, it's bad. Let them come to you. End of the day, they're my dogs and have a larger attachment to me than you. Or, my dogs have a routine that I like them to stick to because it's healthy. Keeping them in your room is bad for them because XYZ. I know you think you're helping by walking them, but it is bad because XYZ. I'm so lost, numbers 1 through 9 says, 1. Get the dogs microchipped if they aren't. 2. Sit him down and tell him bluntly that he is mistreating your animals, grabbing them, keeping them locked in a room, which is seriously not okay to do with huskies, and you aren't going to put up with it anymore. 3. Tell him that you and only you are their owner and only you get to say who handles them and how. 4. If he doesn't listen, file a complaint and take the steps needed to evict him and or find a new place to live. And Opie responds, they are microchipped and I have all the papers I need. I adopted them both from shelters and still have all the legal paperwork. D. Thibs says, your first instinct was probably correct. He's really excited to have dogs around but has no idea what he's doing. If he hasn't already ruined his relationship with your dogs for himself, maybe work with him patiently and teach him better. Teach him ways to play with them outside. Teach him the right way to walk with them, so maybe he can help you out with that. Step in hard for any time he's being too rough, that's unacceptable. But if you ease up, to a reasonable degree, on the rest, he might be more apt to listen. And Cat Juggler says, maybe I'm of a different mindset than everyone else here, but I would be thrilled to have a roommate who wanted to entertain my dogs for me. I would just work on the inappropriate grabbing thing. Also, I guess it is a regional difference, but leaving your dogs outside all day is considered borderline abuse where I live. Additional information from Opie's comments. Just to clarify, I walk them 3 times a day. In the morning, when I get home from work, and then also before getting into bed, sometimes even in PJs. And they're also kept in the garden for most of the day, too. They literally spend the entire day running around in the garden. I can see them from the garden security camera. It's insane how much energy they've got and are perfectly happy with this lifestyle. I do have a doggy door for them to go to the garden. I'm planning on making a new one though, connecting the garden to my room terrace and then locking my door when I'm out so they'll be safe from Max. Their food and water dishes are on my terrace anyway, and I always have the doors to the garden locked when I'm out, too, because Max never needs to go out there. I have the key. And yes, it might be his space too, but he most definitely does not need to go out into the garden, not ever. There's literally nothing out there for people use. It's just grass and dog toys or dog houses. He's never once complained about not being able to get out there, and there was a time I'd just leave it unlocked and he'd still never go outside. I understand he's inexperienced, but I'm pretty sure most people, inexperienced or not, know not to grab a dog by the neck or forcefully grab it to demand attention. And I don't think I'm being paranoid at all. Max has proved it's not wise to trust him to be alone with my dogs, so I don't. And I could definitely file a complaint to the police if I wanted to for keeping my huskies locked in a room all day. And I know for a fact he's locked them in his room before. This probably should have been in my original post, but the very first time he had them in there, I came home and no doggos were waiting for me by the door as usual. Worried, I called out for them and cue my roommate walking out of his room with the dogs. I asked him why they were in there and he said he could hear them crying, so he locked them in his room with him while he played games all day so that they had attention. I told him that was absolutely not okay and made a pretty big deal about it all. He said he'd never do it again, but now the thought is there. So naturally, every time I'd come home after that and see them running from his room, I'd assume that's what he did again. Also, he has no idea how to walk them, and that's my main concern, especially the male. He's a tough one to handle. He's constantly trying to break away and run off while on a walk, and he has done numerous times. Obviously, he'll run back if I call him, but there's no way he'd run back to my roommate if he run off, especially if Max can't even call him by his real name. Alright, well, the community did give OP a lot of advice from different angles about what to do with the dogs and Max, and OP gave us a lot of context in the comments about what Max has done and so and so. Now, I don't know about you guys, but something about OP's responses kind of rubbed me in the wrong way, like she's very controlling about this whole situation. I don't know, could be wrong, maybe it's just a weird sense I got. Regardless, it's time to move on to the update to see what happened next and how the story ends, but of course before that, here's another one of my playlists for you to enjoy after this video. Now let's move on with the update. Hello everyone. Firstly, I want to say thank you so much for all your help. I read every single one of your comments and I couldn't believe how great all the advice I was getting was. So thank you all so much. I spoke to Max yesterday. I tried to keep things calm before immediately moving out because I was afraid of making an irrational decision. My boyfriend gave me the go-ahead to move in with him, and it seems like in the next few months that could be a possibility. Yay! I talked things over with Max and explained thoroughly why certain things he was doing were not okay and why I wasn't allowing him to do them. For example, I explained all about why he shouldn't be walking my dogs. They try to get away, they pull a lot, and they're just very energetic. And he understood. After speaking with him for a few hours, I could tell he was just genuinely interested in my dogs and asking a ton of questions about pretty much all breeds and what it's like to own a dog. At first, I felt very paranoid and thought, oh crap, he wants to steal my doggies. But that wasn't the case, obviously. As some of you pointed out, he just apparently really wants a dog for himself. I then went on to explain the basics on how it really isn't easy, nor is it always fun, but he's still saying he just really wants his own dog and that's why he was smothering mine. I guess it makes sense, but I'm a little worried. I'm not sure Max would be such a great dog owner right now. So I told him if he's serious about all this and he really does want a dog and won't be giving up after a year, I said I'd help him get into dog owning so he doesn't go in on his own and clueless. I've decided to give him classes where we can practice important things that he'll need to do with his own dog. I said the dogs for now will still be locked in my room and garden while I'm out because I don't 100% trust him just yet. But when I get home some evenings, we'll be doing some training. I'll be teaching him how to walk them, how to clean up after them, bathe them, what food to buy and how to know, how to play with them, and how to properly call them if he wants their attention. I also advised him not to get huskies as a first pet because they can be tough, some of you will know, and I'd much rather him have a smaller dog which will be easier to take care of. If you have any recommendations on small, easier dogs to care for, Max and I would appreciate it. Though he's got his heart set on a Westie, and I guess that's it for now. Tomorrow we'll be walking my doggies together and I'll be teaching him the do's and don'ts until he decides he's ready for his own pet. At first, I was incredibly apprehensive when he told me he wanted his own dog, but I'm no one to stop him and it seems like he does really want one. He's been researching up on dog breeds on Google and spending hours researching which breed he'd like. That's it for now, guys. If you still have any advice, I'd really appreciate it. I'm not an expert in training, so we could all use some help. Tongue out face. Thank you, Reddit. Extended from OP's comments. I understand how it may sound condescending. It did. But this man is nowhere near responsible enough to own a dog right now. I think I'd know him pretty well. I wouldn't go around the streets offering just anyone advice on owning a pet. I'm not like that. I am very protective over my dogs, and I had more than enough reason to act the way I did with him regarding how he was treating my dogs. I really don't give a damn if anyone in the comments doesn't like it. I'm protective and I have my own reasons to raise my dogs the way I want to. My dogs are not badly behaved, but they're difficult and stubborn. They're not trying to get away from me when we're on walks, they just like to run off. I've been to a countless amount of trainers and classes on a dog's behavior, and most have commented on just how stubborn my dogs are. It's their temperament. Needless to say, however, they haven't actually gotten away in a few months now, but strangely enough, they will pull when anyone else is walking them and they will try to get away. Unless walked by me, then they will remain by my side and stick to me, and they won't try and escape their leads. Max was behaving stupidly with my dogs, and the reason he was almost bit is because he grabbed them by the neck. He forcefully grabs them and tries to pull them over to where he's sitting. You expect me to sit back and be like, yeah, sure, get your own dog, who cares? No, I don't see him responsible enough to own a dog, and I'm just trying to help him prepare. I'm no expert, and I never stated in my post that I am. I'm just trying to offer him the knowledge that I do have. I'm not exaggerating when it comes to this. He will mistreat his dog without even realizing if he adopts one now. I know that for a fact. Yes, he's mentally stable and he's a grown-ass man, but around my dogs, he acts like a child who gets frustrated very easily when things don't go his way. Locking dogs in your room? Not good. Grabbing them when they don't listen to you? Not good. He doesn't understand that dogs need their own space too right now. Alright, I guess it's a positive update because, well, Max is really enthusiastic about having a dog and he's doing all this research and OP's gonna help him out. But OP's attitude on this, like I said before, it does sound kind of condescending. Like she's gatekeeping dog ownership and she gets to say who's ready to have a dog or not. I don't know, I just felt kind of weird reading that part. Anyways, here's wishing you the best, OP. Hopefully you can teach Max what he needs to be a good dog owner. And now, let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user OwnTomato7. Manager told me to send the title when it was his job. A few years ago, I worked at an exotic car dealership. We were the largest in the world for our brand, which we'll rename nameless for this post, and the exotic car side was run by one of the owners, a manager we'll call Jim, and two other guys my age who did most of the grunt work with me. We sold cars in all 50 US states and would ship them wherever they needed to go. We all worked on every deal and were paid off the profit of the dealership, not individual sales. Jim was a major kiss-ass to the owner who oversaw our department. He wasn't good at his job, but he was good at playing the game needed to stay in the owner's good side. He treated myself and the other younger guys like crap and tried to do as little work as he possibly could. He was openly racist, openly sexist, and knew nothing about the cars we sold or their main competition. Jim's main responsibility was to send out all paperwork to customers and make sure everything was set so we could release the car. A big part of this was making sure the car was registered before shipping it out if they financed it through the manufacturer's financial arm. Most did for a slight discount. This often meant sending all registration paperwork to the customer to go register it locally. Jim was the only one allowed to do this, as our manager had inherent distrust for the younger guys, even though we genuinely did great work. Don't get to #1 in the world for your brand if we weren't doing a good job. Well, when the owner wasn't there, Jim would often do nothing all day and then send some paperwork right before the end of the day. On the day things came to a head, he spent the morning shopping for pellet smokers and a cruise for his family to go on, and kept interrupting me to show me the different options he was looking at. Meanwhile, I was handling 2 in-person deliveries and dealing with all showroom traffic. Long story short, the end of this day rolls around and he didn't get the paperwork sent out, so he told me to do it. I explained that the owner made it clear he's the only one allowed to send the paperwork out for a registration, but he said, just send the effing paperwork out. So that's exactly what I did. The title needs to be filled out with the information for the financing company or they'll have no claim to that car and the registration will show no lien. So I sent the blank title out to the customer, knowing that meant they could just sign it and register like they didn't have a loan. The customer noticed and asked my manager why he left the lien holder off the title, but CC'd our whole department. The owner saw this and freaked out, shouting at my manager saying, "How could you F this up? It's so simple." which led to my manager having to admit he interrupted my actual work to make me send it out while not clarifying that he hadn't even filled out the title yet and that I had to do that. They sent an overnight envelope to the customer to send it back to us. Then we had to overnight it again once we filled it out. He got an earful and the owner never let him live it down. I quit and moved into software sales, network monitoring, code level app security monitoring, and I'll never work in a dealership again. Well, I guess his